Hey guys, I hope you guys are doing great. I hope you guys are doing good. So I came across a talk by this amazing doctor. The things that he touched on, he talks about the future of doctors, the future of medicine, and I just like the points that he had to point out. The the one thing that I'm realizing as medicine continues is how every time you progress in it, you realize how bigger, how better it becomes. When I was in first year, um, I used to look at the students in final year and I think, sure, they've done so much. I'm gonna be, you know, gonna be there, and then you get there. It's interesting. The recently it was weird that you know I was the senior student in the room, and the other students are coming to ask you questions before they go present to the doctor. Interesting. It feels funny. It feels funny. And then, but what I saw at that point is how bigger this can get. You get in front of a class, or you get in front of the morning meeting, and least, you're the least in that room. It's you, it's the intern doctors, it's the comserve doctors, the MOs, it's the registrars, it's the consultant, and the big boss there, and you're presenting in front of this doctor. So I'm saying that whenever I find a doctor that is ahead of me, the way I look at that doctor already is with huge respect. And then I had to listen to some of the things that he says, and he's making points that are really, really important for doctors in the future. So just hearing out.
Allow me to actually introduce myself formally. My name is Dr. Daniel Woźniczka. My patients just call me Dr. Dan. That's what happens when you have a hard to pronounce Polish last name. I'm 29 years old, and in a few days, I'll be finishing my internal medicine residency. I'm also finishing 2 master's degrees, one in business, my MBA, and one in public health, my MPH. I'm also a medical researcher. I've published in some peer-reviewed journals. And outside of medicine, I do a little bit as an entrepreneur. I'm either the founder or expert advisor for a couple different healthcare startups. Last but not least, I've worked as a congressional lobbyist, which is pretty much exactly what you think it is. On behalf of ACP, the American College of Physicians, they've sent me down to Washington, D.C., and I've chatted with congressmen or senators about different healthcare issues. I bring all this up because some of what I'm doing, it really brings to light the positives of our generation as a whole. For example, the millennials are the most educated generation we've ever had in America. We're also the most diverse that this nation's ever seen. Unsurprisingly, we're the most tech savvy also. But there's one particular positive attribute that no one really talks about. It pertains to the workforce. You can ask millennials a very simple question. What do you want to accomplish in your career? They'll give you an answer that may seem simple, but it's profound. They'll all tell you they want to make an impact. They want to change the world. They want to innovate. And what a beautiful mentality that is when you start your career. So as we go forward, this impact will drive forward the millennials. People always ask me, what's it like to be a doctor? I always give them the same exact answer. I love medicine. Couldn't do anything else. I was that guy in kindergarten who knew he was going to be a doctor. I want to tell you guys a story about why I love medicine so much. A few weeks ago, a patient comes into my hospital, really sick. He's got an infection in both of his lungs. That infection is spread to his bloodstream. So he's sick all over. He has something called septic shock. His breathing is so bad that the only way he can get oxygen is to put a tube down his mouth, through his throat, into his lungs, so a machine can breathe for him. His blood pressure starts to plummet. A healthy blood pressure is like 120/80. This guy is 50/30 and dropping further. I have to put a medicine called a vasopressor to bring his pressure back up. For that, I got to put a catheter into his jugular vein, push it further into his subclavian, and even further towards the edge of his heart. It doesn't work that well, though. His pressure keeps on dropping. Before my very eyes, his heart stops beating. He passes away. We don't stop, though. One of my nurses literally jumps on top of the guy, starts pressing onto his chest. We get a crash cart. We take these 2 paddles, charge him up to 600 volts electricity, put it on his chest, and just like you see on television, we shock him. It works. His heart starts to beat again. We literally brought him back from the dead. A few weeks after that, this same guy, his youngest daughter, is getting married. And he's able to walk her down the aisle on her wedding day. I love medicine for things like that. I've only been a doctor for 3 years, but I've got hundreds of those stories already. But even though I love medicine, I don't really love my job. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. No one really talks about what really goes into the day-to-day work of a doctor and how much of it has absolutely nothing to do with medicine. For example, I spend hours a day, any given day, filling out paperwork and forms. For every hour I'll take care of a patient, I'll spend 2 hours filling out forms. The reason for that is pretty simple. Those forms get submitted to an insurance company. And it's based on those forms that the insurance company will reimburse the hospital, will pay them. And it doesn't really matter how great of a job you did on that patient. If that form isn't filled out meticulously with all the details needed, the hospital gets reimbursed less, if at all. Hours of my day on forms. But then it's that last part of my job that's probably the worst. After I diagnose my patient, after I treat them, then I have to navigate insurance companies to make sure that my patients get the medicine they need. As we all know, patients that can't afford their medicine, that's a patient that's not going to take his medicine. It breaks my heart, guys. I've got patients coming to me in the hospital for a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time for the same exact thing, simply because they can't get their pills. And it's not just pills, too. I have to spend hours figuring out which surgeon I can send my patient to, or which dialysis center, which nursing home. Hours of my day. That's what it's really like to be a doctor these days, guys. On the national level, things get even more complicated, though. All these slides we're about to see are from the Kaiser Family Foundation. The amount that we as a nation pay per GDP for healthcare is astronomical. Higher than any other country. And what we get from it, not only is it not better, it's sometimes worse. You might be saying to yourself that this has always been this way, right? That's the American system. No, not really. Because you see, as late as the 1980s, what we were paying was on par with Canada, with the UK, with Europe. It's only recently that these man-made systems have changed it. The future, sadly, as you can see here, even more bleak. In the decades to come, what our nation will pay for Medicare expenditures is going to skyrocket. It could virtually bankrupt the entire nation. Now, all these things, all these pressures, both on the day-to-day personal level of doctor, as well as on the national, they make things more stressful for doctors. In a job that's already stressful, you're literally doing life and death decisions. So these new pressures, whether it be new quality metrics, or doctors being told to see more patients in less time, spending more time to fill out forms. Surgeons are being told, hey, buddy, you got to hurry up those operations, squeeze in a few more cases. All these things come at a cost. I don't mean financial. Right now, we have an epidemic of physicians committing suicide. Every single year in America, we lose between 300 to 400 doctors who take their own life. That's a doctor a day on average. That's an entire graduating medical school class. Gone. Every year. No one talks about this, though. Who's most at risk? It's the female doctor. A female doctor is 2.3 times more likely to commit suicide than a female in the general population. That's medicine these days, guys. There was a great study published in Medscape in 2012. They asked 24,000 doctors a simple question. If you could go back in time and change careers, knowing then what you know now, would you still choose medicine? Or would you do something else? You guys know the results? 54% of doctors said they would stick with medicine. Half of us either can't or don't want to do this anymore. That's the sad truth that no one talks about. So, where do we go from here? What are the millennials? What's a 29-year-old doctor in Chicago just starting out going to do? The answer I have for you is both incredibly simple and very complex. We fight the system. We fight the system for ourselves, for our families, for our patients, for the generations yet to come. I want to tell you guys exactly how we're going to be doing this. We here in this room, we probably wouldn't think of a business, wouldn't think of a hospital as a business, right? But rest assured, in our capitalistic society, there's a lot of people who do just that. Every business needs a boss, needs a CEO. What would you guys think of a basketball coach that never took a jump shot in his life? What about a principal that never taught a classroom? What about an automobile CEO that doesn't know how to drive a car? I mean, I'd have low expectations for all these people, right? But that's what we've been doing for decades. The people who are running our hospitals know nothing about medicine. They run it as an old-fashioned business, looking at Excel spreadsheets, maximizing profits. There was a study that compared this, published in the Journal of Social Science and Medicine in 2011. They compared all the hospitals that were run by normal businessmen as opposed to a couple that were actually run by doctors who had some business training. The hospitals that were run by doctors, in almost every single quality metric we had, whether it be cost of care, medical errors, length of stay, what have you, in almost all the metrics, they outperformed the other hospital by 25% or more. Shocking, right? No, not really, but that's what we've been doing for decades. On the national level, it gets even worse. The people writing our healthcare laws, our policy, they're not doctors either. We've got 435 people in the House of Representatives. We've got 100 in the Senate. 535 total. Would you believe me if I told you that only 3% of our elected officials are doctors or scientists? But these are the people making our laws, despite the fact that we know how contentious a thing healthcare is the past few decades. That impact that I mentioned the millennials been making, that aspiration to change the world, it's not going to be coming with medicine itself. It's going to be coming in the system that we have. Right now, we have the revolution of the business-trained doctor, the rise of the MD, MBA. 15 years ago, we had 30 medical schools who offered a joint MD, MBA degree. Nowadays, it's doubled.
I don't want to make this too long. I mean, I didn't even want to disturb him, right? He spoke on so many points there that was so important that I think I'll touch on other videos. But the major thing for this video that I think is getting to me the most is to think future doctors are going to be involved within the system. And if you look at South Africa, it's either we're going to do this voluntarily, we're going to volunteer, or the circumstances that are taking place in South Africa right now are going to force us. You know, it's interesting that you find some hospitals whereby the CEOs and the people who run these places are not even doctors. And those same people are supposed to be in charge over doctors is interesting. But the thing that gets to me the most is how uninterested we are, especially as rather future health workers. I remember there was a time I was involved. I was involved into tendering, right? And I remember you get into tendering, you realize how political these spaces are. And I remember, I don't know how we even got into talking to it, but we started talking about some of the hospitals that I was attending, and some person was telling me about some of the issues that were taking place in these hospitals. And I was shocked, man. I was shocked. I come here, I try to speak with some of these doctors, and you realize I don't know what I'm talking about. And the person I was talking about with this is really a big person. It's not someone who's, yeah, it's just really a big shock. So I was interested that someone from way back in my hometown was aware of administrative issues that were taking place in Pretoria, and the people actually working at the place aren't interested. This is the thing, especially as I believe that as future healthcare workers, not just doctors, everyone involved in the healthcare system, we are supposed to be involved in. You know, I believe that the future for us, especially in the healthcare system, will only change if we step in. The mindset of waiting for some people to come in and help us must must now be removed, because as things stand, a lot of things are going bad, and we are yet to be interested into changing these things, you know. So the thing that got me, a lot of things that got me interested in this video, but the one thing that I really like is that we're supposed to now be doctors who are qualified with the MD, MBA, and that is the future. I think that is the way to think about it. Big ups to this doctor, man, at 29 years old. You know, he's doing so much already. I am really motivated. I'm really inspired, and I hope that we can learn more from doctors like him. Right, so his name is Dr. Daniel, and that's her name was Nixia. Yeah, some amazing stuff. I didn't even want to disturb him. Like I said, he touched on very important issues that I'd like to talk about in the future. But for this one, man, let's be healthcare workers of the future. We're gonna be involved within our system. You know, who's gonna make changes actually. Who's gonna find ways to get into these administrative spaces and seek answers and want answers. You know. Yeah, so that is all I have in this video. Thank you for watching.